Brothers and sisters, we've all heard of alchemy, the process of converting base metals into gold. But just now, the general public is beginning to learn the esoteric meaning of alchemy, which is the transmutation of baser negative energies and emotions into pure love, light, consciousness, and truth. This is a sermon which came to me that I feel I need to share with others. Welcome back to Wake the Dead. You just fought and lost an exhausting battle with your lower self, with your false ego. You've been living a way of life unconsciously, telling yourself a story over and over in your head about who you are, what your value is, and what your life means. But you've recently found that no matter how much wealth you acquire, no matter how much approval you get from others, no matter how much pleasure you experience from external things, you're still not quite satisfied. There's a scripture by Jesus that is widely misunderstood. And what he talks about is the fire that will never be quenched. Now, a lot of people interpret that as certain people are going to, after they perish, go to a place where they're going to suffer and there's no hope of escape from the suffering. But that's not actually what it means. The fire that will never be quenched is the fire of desire and attachment. The fire of hell is not a place deep down within the earth where there's these infernal winged beings with horns poking at you with pitchforks and damning you for eternity. The fire of hell is inside of you, and it represents suffering. Because of our own unconsciousness, because we become identified with this story that we've created in our minds about who we are, where we belong, and what have you, we feel incomplete. Because no matter where you look, and no matter how much wealth you gain, and no matter how much knowledge you gain, if you have the best education in the world, if most of the people in the world absolutely adore you, if you have approval from others, if you have fame, if you have fortune, it still doesn't complete you. There's nothing in this world on the material level that will complete you. So it is like a fire. It is like a fire that burns you. And the more you feed it, the bigger the flames get. And the bigger the flames get, the more it burns you. And the more it burns you, the more you want to feed it. That's why it's called the fire that shall never be quenched. So does that mean that there's no hope? Well, yes, there is. And the hope rests within allowing the fire to extinguish on its own when we stop feeding it. One of the greatest mistakes of the human ego is the assumption, I don't deserve this. Or, on the flip side, I deserve this. And to be more specific, I don't deserve to go through hardships and trials and pain. And I do deserve to be happy and fulfilled and loved and free. And on a certain level, that's true. But on the egoic level, it is a complete and total delusion. See, the fact of the matter is, life is difficult. One of the first things the Buddha ever taught is to live is to suffer. But once we can accept that there are trials, that there are hardships, that life is difficult, and we become willing to face that, suddenly it's not so burdensome, it's not so difficult. Most of us have pain deep down within us. We inherit it from past lives, we inherit it from our ancestors, we inherit it from childhood trauma, and until we are actually able to face it, it lives on within us. And as long as we allow it to live on within us, it craves more of the same energy. So we keep manifesting the same problems, the same kind of suffering over and over again, only it's a downward spiral and it just seems to get worse and worse and worse. And when we're unconsciously identified with this fictitious phantom sense of self, it seems like we're victims. It seems like these things are just happening to us. But once we realize that we are cause in our own life, that life isn't just happening to us, that we're not a product of our environment, but our environment is a product of us. Once we take responsibility for everything we've said and done in this life and in all previous lives, all other lives, once we take responsibility for that and face it, then and only then can we become free from it. Every time I look at somebody else and I judge them and I place a judgment on them, there's something in me that I'm not wanting to look at. So I'm projecting onto them. But as soon as I become willing to look at what is it in me that feels hurt or threatened by this person and face that, and face that that is a part of me, I'm able to overcome it. We are able to overcome it. We are able to transcend it. One of the greatest quotes I've ever heard is, on the other side of fear is freedom. When I talk about facing your fears, I'm not talking about jumping into shark-infested waters because you're afraid of sharks, or putting your hand on a hot stove because you're afraid of being burned. I'm talking about getting honest about what our fears actually are. I'm going to use an example out of my own story. I was bullied a lot in school. And, I'm not saying that the bullies were in the right at all. I'm not justifying their actions at all. However, on some level, my ego enjoyed being bullied. And when somebody would say some sort of rude comment to me, I would retaliate at them because the unresolved pain in me from the past, the trauma, and and the pain that I was storing deep down within me craved more of the same energy. And because I was so identified with this story in my head, it gave me a false sense of self, and I felt like I'm a victim and I had somebody to blame, so therefore I could justify being lazy, not working hard, being disrespectful, being selfish. And when somebody confronted me about it, I could point to somebody else and say, oh, well, I'm being bullied, I'm being treated unfairly. If I get truly honest about it, I used to act strange. I was a class clown. I used to dress strange. Um, I used to do things to get negative attention because my ego craved the negative attention. And I'm not saying I was consciously and intentionally doing this. On an unconscious level, I was trying to get negative attention from people because I didn't know who I was and I was looking for a sense of self. And even if that sense of self was a negative, miserable sense of self, at least it was something I could identify with because I didn't know who I was. And so I was always trying to force myself to be something or somebody. Depending on who I was around, I would act in certain ways. I would act the way I thought you wanted me to act. Or I would try to sound like I was really smart. Or I would try to sound one of my things was I would say really shocking, offensive, and controversial things. And it was all to feed this false sense of self. And if you would have confronted me about it and said, you're lost, you don't even know who you are, I would have said, yeah, I know who I am. But I didn't. And today, the more I let go of the need to identify with something or to know who I am, the more I let go of that and just allow myself to be, the more truly, truly I get to know my inner divine self. Every day is a day when I need to let go of everything I think I know. And so I say a prayer. Please set aside everything I think I know about myself, my fellows, my illness, my spirituality, and the divine, that I may keep an open mind and open heart, remain teachable, and have a much needed new experience with these things. Help me to see the truth. There are so many layers to on the path to ascension. When I talk about ascension and when I talk about awakening, I'm not necessarily talking about one event. I'm talking about a process with infinite depth and infinite layers, and you could always go deeper. You can always grow more loving, more compassionate. You can always shine brighter. One of the scriptures in the book Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu is, the Tao which can be named is not the eternal Tao. And you can use that same scripture for many different things. The truth that can be named is not the eternal truth. The God that can be named is not the eternal God. The mother that can be named is not the eternal mother. The universe that can be named is not the eternal universe. In order to find who we truly are, we must let go of who we think we are. because who we are cannot be found on the level of thought. And to say just be yourself, well, that's a fallacy because you already are who you are. And so when I try to force myself to be something, even if it's being myself, you know what? I'll close by saying this. If I'm acting by force, it's my ego. If I'm flowing naturally with the rhythms of nature and life, it's spiritual. So whenever I come into a challenge or whatever I come into an inner conflict difficulty, I ask myself, what am I resisting? Because as long as I'm resisting something that already is, I can't be free from it. However, when I surrender deeply to the eternal stream of life, I become one with it. And then you shall see the truth, and the truth shall set you free.